Hey everyone, Grandmaster Ben Feingold here. I wanted to watch some basketball today, but I can't believe how bad the teams are. It's probably the worst teams ever in any playoffs ever in my lifetime. I guess in the 50s, teams were worse, I guess. But okay, like I'm watching Toronto, Milwaukee. Hopefully they'll both get eliminated somehow. And then, yeah, it seems like all the teams are trying to lose. And most of them are doing a good job. So that's unfortunate. But I have good news. I finished the second season of Better Call Saul, and it turns out I do get AMC somehow, and on demand I could watch the first 2 episodes. So I'm caught up. As you know, the best television shows ever, I've seen all of them, which is sort of fortuitous. I'm not going to put them in an order, but you guys can do that. And then you can put shows that you like in the comments, and I'll delete your comments. So Breaking Bad, of course, Sopranos, Deadwood. Let's see. Better Call Saul's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's one of the best ever, but I like watching it. I know I'm forgetting one of them. I don't know which one I'm forgetting. Boardwalk Empire. I've seen every second of all of those shows, and they're great. And there's other good shows, too. I tried to watch some other ones. But, I mean, watching basketball, I just ate, so I can't believe how bad the teams are. Okay, so if you live in Milwaukee or Toronto, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Not because of the basketball, you should be ashamed of yourselves anyway. But let's see, you guys had some suggestions for what to do, so that made sure I didn't do any of that. Let's flip the board in case Mike Hummer watches the video. Seems unlikely. I don't think Mike Hummer's watched any of my videos. I watch all of his videos. And some of you forgot to donate. Most of you didn't. I think we had like 4,000 people watch the last video, and I think 3990 donated. 10 of you didn't donate. And if you believe that, I guess you'll believe anything. So don't forget to go to atlchessclub.com/donate, etc., etc. Okay, and don't forget etc. That's even more important than donating. I'm itchy because I just shaved. Yeah. Terrible. Okay, what were we doing? Oh yeah, chess video. Okay, wait, a commercial's on. That's much better than the game. Okay. So this is one of my favorite games. It was played over 50 years ago, not by me. It was played between Edward Gufeld, one of the most hated chess players of all time, and he died, I think, about 10 years ago. And he's playing Gufeld-Kavalek, who's one of the strongest American players in the 70s and 80s. However, at this time, this was in a student Olympiad, and he was representing Czechoslovakia, where he was from at the time. Moved to the U.S. later, I guess in the late 60s, moved to the U.S. And he writes a column for some newspaper. I think it's online now. I think it's Huffington Post now, but he used to write for maybe Washington Post. I don't know. You guys know. Okay, I never actually played Kavalek because he sort of got out of chess when I was getting into chess. But then we don't want to Skype people pop up. Okay, so let's go. Oh, this is a famous game, and it actually has a name. Sort of like you have a name. This has been named Kavalanche because of you'll see why. Okay, Kavalek is black, and he's playing Eddie Gufeld, and they're both students, so they're probably in their early 20s, I guess. And Kavalek was a very solid player when he was one of the top 5 players in the U.S., but I guess when he was a junior, then he wasn't as solid. Okay, so he played bishop c5 and then f5, which I've never seen anybody play ever. I mean, there's games with it, but I mean, if you take 2 players over 2,700, I'm guessing this has occurred 0 times. But it's very tricky and complicated, so if you play tricky and complicated openings that don't lose by force, and you know them well, especially in the 60s when there wasn't computer analysis or good chess books to tell you what to do, you could basically play anything. Okay, Gufeld played d4, which is the point of c3. And, well, he didn't play f5, so he could move his bishop away. He wanted to take on e4. And this is why this is so interesting, because I have no idea what the right move is. And I'm sure even my computer would have to think about it and change its mind. Because even though it has no mind, that's how complicated it is. Because there's so many things you can take here. You can play bishop takes c6. You can take the bishop on c5. You can take the pawn on e5. So who knows? Okay, he played knight g5. He didn't do any of that. So Knight g5 keeps the threat alive of taking the bishop on c5, and also the pawn on e4 is hanging. To be perfectly honest with you, well, I would never have white in this position, but or black. But if I had white, I probably wouldn't consider knight g5. So if my opponent played that, I would be in sort of shock. 3 things to take, he didn't take anything. Okay, bishop b6, saving the bishop. d5, attacking the knight. That move I would consider, because after knight e7, knight takes e4, I just assume that white's better, because nice knight on e4, nice pawn on d5, the bishop on c1 has a lot of squares, bishop on c8's not very good. I like white here. Okay, so I understand d5. Okay, now black did something called interference, which doesn't happen a lot in regular chess games, but it happens a lot in puzzles. So if you solve tactical puzzles, you're going to see this idea a lot. Black would like to play queen takes g5. Amazing, he missed. Queen takes g5, but that's defended by the bishop on c1. So he played the move e3. And this interferes with the bishop on c1, defending the knight on g5. If you take the pawn on e3, you just lose your knight. And you could win the knight on c6, but this doesn't look very good for white. g2 is hanging, e3 is hanging, c6 is hanging. It doesn't look so good. Okay, so after e3, Gufeld played knight e4. The knight was attacked, so he moved to the center. And black played very aggressively with queen h4, threatening the knight on e4. Queen f3, defending the knight. Knight f6. The knight f6, I'll tell you, if I had the white pieces, I wouldn't be looking at knight f6. I would be looking at e takes f2 check, and probably that's the only move I would look at. I think e takes f2 check is reasonable, although it lets the bishop on c1 get out, so then white could play bishop g5 later and possibly win the black queen. Knight f6 is, I mean, that's why I'm showing you this game, because Gufeld had to face a lot of obstacles this game, because Kavalek is a more talented player, a better player, and a trickier player. And actually, I'm sure Gufeld would want to have black most of the time this game, because that's the way that Gufeld liked to play. He liked to play sort of offbeat and tricky. Okay, so white decided winning a piece is good, so he took the knight and took the other knight. So white's up a piece, but you'll notice that black has all 8 of his pawns. In fact, throughout the game, you're going to notice that. Okay, so he took on f2 with check. The king went to d1, which is a very strange move. It seems like either e2 or f1 makes more sense. I think f1 makes the most sense. Problem with king f1 is you block your rook on h1. The problem with king e2 is when black plays d takes c6, he's threatening the bishop and bishop g4. And in the game, white played bishop e2. So if white's king was on e2, then white would be hard-pressed to defend against everything. You could take on c6, but it seems that in this position, you can't take the rook on a8 because bishop g4 is check, and then your queen is attacked. Oh, I have to move slightly. Got to donate for that. The queen in the corner, so yeah, I don't think that's a good move. Okay, so you play bishop e2, which stops him from losing his bishop, and it stops bishop g4. So let's take stock. White's up a knight. I'm sorry. White's a knight ahead, and black has 3 pawns. Black has 2 sets of double pawns, but there's 2 important factors in this position that aren't material related. One is black has a pawn on f2 on the 7th rank that's protected twice, and white's king is on d1. And white, of course, has no development on the queen side, but white's king's on d1, black has a passed pawn on the 7th rank. Those are important factors. Okay, bishop e6, getting his bishop out. Now his rook on a8 can go to d8. Queen h5 check. It seems that even though white's a piece up, if anybody's going to attack somebody's king, it's going to be white's king that gets attacked. Black's king is perfectly safe, and white's king is running around. So trading queens actually makes sense. And then he played b3, which does a couple of things. It takes away the c4 square for the black bishop, and it prepares to develop with tempo with the move bishop to a3. So b3 makes some sense. Okay, bishop d5, threatening the g2 pawn, bishop a3 check, bishop g4 check, and bishop h3. He defended his pawn on g2. Rook g8, threatening g2. There's no way to defend it, so white develops his last piece. And now black has 4 pawns for a piece. And remember, I told you earlier, count the pawns, black still has 8 pawns. Okay, rook f1, rook d8, king e2. Okay. So in this position, the most important pawn is the f2 pawn. Without that, I would guess the game should end in a draw. But with the f2 pawn, black should be winning. And white's probably going to win that pawn by playing knight c4. Knight c4 attacks the bishop on b6, and then the bishop has nowhere to go, so you're going to lose your f2 pawn eventually. So black prevented knight c4 with desperate measures. He played the only move, I think, that stops knight c4. Rook takes d2 check. And the rook isn't really important. The knight and the rook were probably similar value here, but more important was the bishop on b6. As long as black has his bishop on b6, that pawn on f2 is safe. If white can trade that off, then you're going to lose your pawn on f2. Okay, so he took the rook, obviously. e4, here come the black pawns, here comes the Kavalek. And Gufeld did something very interesting, played bishop f8. Following my rule, always play bishop f8, 5 years before I was born. That's very nice of him. Although my bishop f8 rule is for black to play it, but I'll take whatever I can get. Now the point of bishop f8 is quite interesting. White wants to trade the bishop so he can win the f2 pawn. And he has 2 ideas here. One is to play bishop h6 and then bishop e3. I'll show you. Okay. And the other is to play b4 and bishop to c5. Okay. So black played f4, which stops bishop h6 to e3 because it blocks the diagonal. White played b4. Now, if you remember a few moves ago, the water that matches my personality, sparkling. You'll remember black played rook takes d2 check because he wanted to save his pawn on f2, and the white knight was going to take the black bishop. Now, white's going to play bishop c5, trade off the bishops, and then hard for black to win because his pawns can get weak and he has no bishop. So if files get open for the white rooks, then white might win. Okay, now of course, he's not really in danger of losing his f-pawn because he has e3 check. So this wasn't absolutely necessary. This just shows how much talent and original creative thought that Kavalek has to even find such a move. Played the move rook g5. I guess if I was white and I didn't see what black's idea was, but I was trying to figure out some idea, I would think maybe black wants to play rook d5 check, and then king e2 would allow f3 mate. My king would go to c2, and then the black pawns start rolling in. So not seeing black's idea makes sense to me because rook d5 check seems like a reasonable idea too. Play bishop c5. Okay. Now, obviously, the variation I gave earlier, checkmate is not checkmate because the white bishop is on c5, so we have king takes f2 and king e3. Okay. So probably when Gufeld played bishop c5, he thought, finally I'm going to either win this f-pawn or I'll block all those pawns up. Black's pawns are actually very well placed now, controlling all the squares. As soon as black plays e3, white plays king e2 and blocks everything. And I'm sure Gufeld was very surprised at black's next move. If you haven't seen the game, pause the video and try to find it. Most of my students have seen this game before, but maybe you haven't. Okay, and I'm sure that I've shown this like in St. Louis in one of my lectures, or maybe more than one. Now, a lot of you like to complain because you have internet connections, so that gives you the right. about why doesn't Ben do this and why doesn't Ben do that? Why doesn't Ben listen to me, etc. A lot of the stuff that you want me to do, I've already done. I just did it for the St. Louis Chess Club. So if you go to the YouTube page of the Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis, there's about 1,100 videos, and about 110, 120 are mine. You can search by typing my name in under the list of people who make videos for them. And a lot of the stuff that you want, like, Chigorin or whatever crazy stuff you want, and a lot of the videos that I could do for my channel, you might have already seen in St. Louis. There's only a finite number of chess games that are interesting for you, I think. Okay, so Black played rook takes c5. I hope you found that. Sacrificing the exchange again. And now that f2 pawn's pretty well defended, the white rooks are sort of silly. They don't have any activity. And Black has the unusual material imbalance of a bishop and 5 pawns for 2 rooks. And those pawns are pretty strong, especially the 3 center pawns. Okay, so this is really nice that somehow through the last 15 moves or so, Kavalek was able to save his pawn on f2, and unlike most chess games, Black still has all 8 of his pawns. Rook b1 was played, f3 with the idea of e3 and e2. Now he tried to block the bishop again by playing rook b4. He's hoping Black takes the rook so he can win all those kingside pawns. King f5, and he did block the bishop, I should say, with rook to d4. And now, luckily for Black, although he probably saw it before, when he takes the rook and plays king f4, White can't take the pawn on f2 because e3 check wins. Now, I've seen actually 2 scores of this game. One is that White resigned here, and one is that White played rook takes f2, which is absurd, e3 check, and then after he lost his rook, he resigned. Okay, if my opponent has 8 pawns left and I should resign, I'm not going to take one of them and then resign. That's horrible. That just shows you the kind of person Gufeld was. Terrible. So we'll just say that White resigned here, because White should resign. And if he plays rook takes f2 and allows e3 check, some of you probably can't see that at home. Okay, that's just awful. So yeah, we're not going to. So we'll just say that he resigned here. It's very good timing because my wife just got home. So we'll say hi to my wife, and then we can end the video. Isn't that a good idea? I think it's a good idea. Okay, so remember, atlchessclub.com, and more importantly, atlchessclub.com/donate. Ooh, that's a good website too. And follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and you can follow me in real life too. But I've been watching Better Call Saul, so I might be packing, so watch it. Okay, see you guys next time. Bye. Hi, wife.